Grand Valley is a teaching university, and it's focused on the student, and yet we have research university quality facilities.
Grand Valley is very focused, first and foremost, on the education of our students.
The style at Grand Valley is very hands-on. You work directly with the profs in smaller classroom settings.
So it's a really open environment, a lot of discussion in the classrooms.
We're also really able to apply our skills and our knowledge that we've learned at Grand Valley to make somebody's life better.
Owning and operating a business is the American dream. That is, until HR issues like payroll and taxes, benefits administration, workers' compensation, and regulatory compliance lead to sleepless nights and reduced profits. Keeping focus on the core business and finding the right partners to help with ancillary functions like HR administration is why more than 500 companies across the country turn to Tryon Solutions. Tryon relieves the stress and burden of HR administration, so companies, small to large, can stay focused on why they went into business in the first place. Tryon's size provides client employees access to better benefits and HR services available usually to only large corporations, all while taking employer risk and regulatory strain off client backs. Tryon can help you attract and retain top talent, mitigate risk, and stabilize costs. Check it out at RelyOnTryon.com.
Hello, and welcome to Reboot the World, Campus Party's first ever digital edition. We are excited to have Rick Snyder present Navigating a Path in an Accelerating World. Take it away, Rick.
Well, thanks, Jason. It's great to be with everyone today, and it's wonderful to have this digital version. Again, we always like things in person, but this is a great new thing to try, so I'm up for it, and I hope you are too. When they asked me to do this, the issue is what would be a good topic? And when I looked at the profile of all the young people, the people early in their careers to still planning their careers, I thought it'd be great to try to share some advice that I've gained over the last 30, 40 years in terms of building a career path, particularly in a more challenging world, because that's one of the challenges we face. So what I'd like to do is actually share some slides with you, and it's fairly short. The way I view it is I've got 3 underlying assumptions, 6 principles to share with you, and 2 key items that go along with all this. And I think you see it's a simple model, and it's worked for me. This is a model I've used my entire life. So with that, let's get going. So in terms of the first things we need to do are really look at what are the underlying assumptions. And there are 3 global assumptions I've used. 2 of these I've had for years and years, the first 2. And the first thing is the velocity of change in our world has only continued to go faster and faster. I don't see it slowing down. And I believe it actually accounts for a lot of the problems in our world. Things are going so quickly. I think as humans, we're having a difficult time adjusting to the speed of change, the way information's coming at us, and we need to adapt to that. We need to gain more control on how do we manage these fast-moving pieces coming at us and how do we address them in terms of looking at our long term. Many years ago, you could say, hey, if I go in this field, it's going to be good for 40, 50, 60 years, my entire career. Now there are many careers that could disappear over the next 50 years. How do you plan for that? How do you create flexibility to be successful where velocity of change is only going to go faster and faster? The second thing is we're becoming a more global world. That was clearly the case. So the differences you're finding between countries, between people in countries, is reducing all the time. And I believe being a more global world is good for all of us in the sense that the more we understand and know about one another, the more opportunities we have for peace and prosperity across the world. Usually it's when you don't know people and you don't understand them that you run the risk of having more conflicts, more problems. So being more global is a very much a positive. The way I wrote this, it says it's more virtual now because of what we're going through today with the pandemic. There is less physical contact going on now. So I believe it is important to have virtual events like we're having here. We do need to have this dialogue going across borders and across the world. The last one is something that I've always learned, is whenever you do a plan, just remember it's probably not going to happen exactly how you laid it out. There are too many independent variables to control in this world. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have a plan. Having a plan allows you to say, as I go along this path and something changes, do I have to zig this way or zag that way? Do I have to take a detour? But can I come back to that plan? And can I stay effective on that? If you don't have a plan, that's the worst answer of all in my view. Then you could just wander, and wandering is not a good thing in a fast-changing world. So those are the 3 key assumptions. Now let me walk through some principles with you. I've got 6 principles. I'm not going to walk through them all here. I'm going to take them one at a time with a slide on each one, and then I've got a couple more items to share with you. First, develop a clear direction. And when I say a clear direction, that doesn't mean you're going to have an answer for your entire life, but where do you want to head? Mine was simple. I wanted to help people. In that context, I set some goals aside. I said, first, I wanted a private sector career. I wanted to go out and work. I wanted to learn what the private sector, what business was all about. And I said, I want to do that until for 20 or 30 years, until I get to 40s, 50s, 60s. But then I hope to be successful enough where I could stop saying I have to do private business and I could go do public sector work. I was fortunate. I had the opportunity to move from being a tech person to a venture capitalist into government. And so that second phase was to be after 30 or 40 years, is if I had a good opportunity to go help people, go do it. Actually, I have a third goal, which I'm going into now. I finished government service, and it's simple. I just want to help people on a smaller scale. How do you give back? How do you continue to help people? And that's why I view events like this as great. So what are your goals? What are the time periods? As I mentioned, I set time periods to say, this is what I'd like to do in my first 20 or 30 years. What would be the next 10 or 20 years? What's after that? This next one about what conditions do you need is critically important, though. Think about that. What educational background do you need? What are experiences you need to gain if you want to have the opportunities to go into these fields? What's the continuing education that's now so much a part of our world that you're going to need to accomplish? And the other part is who will join you. These journeys are not all by yourself. It's how do your family come around? Again, I found a wonderful wife during this period. She found me. I was lucky to get her. So you have to look at these opportunities as how do you go on these journeys with others? And how do you successfully make sure they enjoy it too? Number 2 in terms of principles. This one's critical because this sets the foundation of who you are. You need to build trust. Trust doesn't automatically happen. You have to earn it. And it starts with doing what you said you're going to do. One of the simplest ones I've always used with people is just showing up for a meeting on time. People that show up late, I view it as they're showing they don't respect your time. I've always viewed it as if someone wants me to be at a certain place, I'm going to do it because I want to earn their trust. The other part is emphasizing win-wins versus win-lose situations. Best things happen in life when everybody wins. How do you find mutual benefit? If you have a win-lose situation and someone loses, long-term, that relationship is not going to last. It can't. It doesn't make any logical sense that it should. So look for win-wins and avoid win-loses. And one of the things I do mention here is first impressions do count when you first meet people. So again, it can be the very simple things about doing those first things you said you're going to do those follow-up items, be there on time. It's how you start building trust. And trust is a two-way street. Sometimes you'll find in business or political events in particular, is someone has to start trusting someone else first. And I viewed it. I will take a risk with people and say, yeah, let's see if we can make this happen. And again, just as I said at the beginning, if they don't do what they said they're going to do, they've lost my trust. And it's hard to get it back. If they've done it, we're building trust. And we've got a great relationship that in many cases, I've seen these things go on for years to decades in terms of building stronger relationships with people because of trust. Number 3, earn respect. Trust and respect are not the same thing in my view. How do you earn respect? It's about achieving results. You have to get measurable, meaningful outcomes that make a difference in people's lives. And you have to show you care about people and their success. Trust is about believing in one another. Respect is about showing you can actually make good things happen. So don't forget that you need to work on both. The most successful people are the people that are very good at both 2 and 3. Number 4, this is a big one. Manage risk. Don't avoid it. Too many people in life say, I don't want to take a risk. Well, how are you going to grow? How are you going to experience new things? How are you going to make major improvements? How do you innovate? I always say, when you look at a great inventor and stuff like that, they're not fully rational. If they were fully rational, they probably wouldn't do it. They've got that extra spirit, that extra fire to say they're going someplace where no one's gone before. They know they're taking a risk, and they're willing to take it because the outcome can be so powerful. So manage risk. Don't avoid it. And that gets to that first point. When you look at your decisions, do a thoughtful analysis to say, what are the consequences of each path? Understanding what it could do to you and others. Understand what happens if something doesn't go right. What are the other plans you can build into this? That's that last point. Actually, I joke to people that living life by plan A only is way too stressful. What's your plan B? If something doesn't work out right, how can you minimize the negative consequences? How can you still accomplish some positive things? I've joked to people, I've been down to plan E, F, and G. It starts getting kind of stressful when you get that far down the alphabet. But always think about it when you're working on a plan. What's plan A? What's plan B? And what are your options and the consequences of those if you have to change? As I said, there are too many independent variables in this world to make it work out every time. The other part is that I have here is develop others into leaders and decision makers, both personally and professionally. It's not about just you. Many of the greatest things you want to accomplish, if you really want to accomplish a lot, you can't do it by yourself. You need to figure out how to engage with others, whether it's in your family or whether it's in a business or a startup or in a government. How do you get them engaged? And then how do you provide great direction and coaching skills to help them be successful and see them flourish and see them get credit? These are critically important things. Number 5, it's about constantly learning. I view it as continuous improvements happening every day. I'm trying to innovate every day in terms of new and better ways to do things. Again, that goes back to the thing is I'm managing risk. I know it might not work out, but if you don't try, how do you accomplish these things? When I first became governor, it was interesting. Everyone said, you can't do some of these things. And I said, why not? I said, we've got to try. And I told my team that if everything we worked on worked, it meant we weren't doing our job because we were in a crisis and we had to innovate. So try new things, but understand that there's a continuous learning process. And if it doesn't work at first, come back and do it again. That's where I came up with a phrase, relentless positive action. Be positive. Try to show positive progress every time. And if you don't get all the places you wanted to get on the first round, be relentless and come back and do it again later on. You're going to be that much closer to getting it done. The last point is really important on this slide, though, too. The most important lessons you learn from life is from what didn't go right. Those are things that stick with you, and you should grow on them. I've had it everything from personal issues when I was young to going through it through the business world to dealing with things like the water crisis in Flint during my time as governor. Those were terrible things, but I had to learn lessons from them, and I did learn lessons, and hopefully that improves who you are and can help improve people overall long-term by taking those experiences and putting them in the right context about their learning. The last one, number 6, be positive. It always works to keep a positive attitude. Being down doesn't help. And that's not always easy to say when you are going through a tough time. But being a positive person really pays off. And that's the one thing I always like to do with people is I used to put something up and say, is this glass half full or half empty? If you're a half full person, you're on the path. If it's half empty, think about what you could do to get on a path where you can look at the positive perspectives of what you got to take on. Because the sooner you take that challenge on and engage in it and make it happen, the better off you're going to be. So that's the 6 ones, but let me give you 2 more supporting items because these are critically important. They're not principles in their own right, but I believe if you don't do these things, the whole plan may not work out and you're going to run into issues. The first one are mentors. Learn from those who know more than you do and pass it on to others. I've been fortunate. One of the greatest things helped me in my entire life has been having great mentors, starting with my parents. But I was fortunate. I had professors that were mentors. When I first went to work, I had some great mentors in the first organization I worked in through my whole life. These are people I looked up to, that I knew I could learn from, and I knew I should listen to. How could I leverage their experiences to be better off? It was interesting. As I've gotten older, people would say, well, you helped mentor me. And that goes back about passing it on. So I've been fortunate enough to have some great mentor relationships with people where I've tried to help them. And I only had one rule when I'd agree to be a mentor to someone, is you don't need to tell me, but you're going to tell me some point in your life, you're going to pass it on. You're going to share it with someone else just out of the goodness of doing the right thing. And it's something that I've always had people come back and say, I'd be happy to. The other part about mentorship is you shouldn't forget. Mentors learn from their mentees. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. It's a chance to learn and grow from one another. And so I think it's critically important. The other thing I'll share with you that I think is really important when it comes back to this point about being in an accelerating world is, how do you help solve that problem? If things are going faster and faster, what's a positive recommendation to help deal with this speed of change? The most positive single recommendation I have for people is mentorship. And why do I say that? If you're in this world where things are coming at you so fast, you're having trouble addressing it, things like that, what's the best thing that could help you as a human? It's having a trusted guide, someone that can walk you through the issues, someone that's not going to tell you the answer, but could help give you guidance and reinforce that you're thinking about it the right way. So mentors have always been important in my view, but I think mentorship is only going to be dramatically more important in the future world. Those people that have great mentors are going to have a major leg up dealing with this acceleration issue and the velocity of change. So if you don't have a mentor now, go look for one, go find one, go give it a shot. And again, it's just like everything else. You're taking a risk, but it's a good risk to take. So mentorship is critically important. The other one is balance in life, about keeping life in perspective. And I remembered that early on. I learned that in my career when I was working, because I was a workaholic. All I did was work. And that's where I mentioned finding my wife, Sue, and she helped bring balance to my life. The best illustration, I would say, was actually when we had our first child. It made an amazing difference. And you might say, well, your life's more complicated when you have a child and you've got more stress and everything else. Well, it was such a wonderful thing. And the way I viewed it is, nothing put life in perspective better. When you came home from a long day, could be the best day or the worst day you ever had at work, and you walk in the door and you have a child run up and grab your leg and say, Daddy, I love you. And they want your full attention. You have to learn to put aside, like I said, the greatest accomplishment you may have ever had or the worst day at work you ever had. It doesn't mean anything. And you need to focus in on that child at that point in time. So having that balance makes you a better person. So the way I describe it is, don't live in only one of those dimensions, whether it's a work dimension or your personal life dimension. Figure out how to strike a good balance between them, because you'll actually be better at both. So very simply, navigating a path in an accelerating world, the world is only going to be more challenging. But what I can say is, I believe in you. Extremely talented people coming up in the generation we have now. You can do it. But again, don't view it as just happening. View it as something you need to navigate and be proactive on. And again, think about the assumptions I went through. Velocity of change is only going to go faster and faster. Being part of a global world is only going to be more important. And your plan isn't going to be perfect, but have a plan. Don't just assume things are going to happen. And those 6 principles. Again, set a clear direction. And don't feel you can't change it or modify it. Again, there are so many variables. But pick a path to go on. Again, you're deciding your future versus letting the rest of the world decide what's happening to you. And then within that context, there are 2 basics you can always bring: building trust and earning respect. These are critically important things that can define who you fundamentally are, and no one else can take them away from you, and nobody else can do them if you don't do them for yourself. Manage risk, don't avoid it. If you want to innovate, if you want to change the world, and I hope you do, you got to take some risks, folks. But don't do them just willy-nilly. Figure out what the path you need to be on. There's a plan A, there's a plan B, there's a plan C. And like I said, I've been far down the alphabet. That does get a little scary at points. But at least it's better to, again, have a plan and try than not to try. Constantly learn. I'm a proud nerd. I'm still learning every day. I'm hoping to learn from the questions you ask, because that'll make me a better person in terms of understanding what's on your mind. So let's make opportunities out of these things. And then finally, be positive. That's my view. Relentless positive action. No blame, no credit. What's the problem? What's the solution? And be relentless in pursuit of solutions. I think it's a good model. I think we need more of it in our world, which is far too negative today. And then those two supporting items, again, go find a mentor, or I hope you have one already. And again, you'll have different mentors at different phases of your life. They bring different skill sets and benefits to you. And then finally, try to find that work-life balance in terms of enjoying things. Again, work hard, but also find ways to have fun with your family and add value that way. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm really looking forward to having some questions. And again, I'm happy to follow up the best way. It's great to see this campus party going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. First one is, could anything slow down the increasing velocity of change?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting if you look at it. I don't really know of many things that could slow down that pace of change. It can change how change happens. An illustration would be the COVID-19 crisis itself. It's been a massive change in our world, but it's changed the physical travel through our globe. It's made a massive change in how acceleration was going, but in its own right, it's made this acceleration of change that we have to deal with even faster. So there's an illustration of something that redirected where that velocity was headed, where that acceleration was headed, into a totally different way. But I think it's actually sped it up rather than slowed it down.
Great, thank you. What one thing in the presentation should I make sure that I do?
Well, I appreciate that question. And that's one you can probably tell from my presentation, I sort of harped on that one a lot, is the whole mentorship thing. Again, I think that was the single most important thing, that if I look back at who I am, the accomplishments, how I've grown, it's a combination of styles, learning points, knowledge I've gained from various mentors. As I mentioned, I've had different ones from my parents through different phases of my career. And as I look at who I am, I can actually look at my style, how I do things, and I can attribute parts of those back to specific individuals and how I handle things. Relentless positive action, I give credit to my first boss out of school, a guy named Jerry Wolf. Jerry was a fabulous guy. He's since passed away, but he was a guy that actually went out of his way about not taking credit. He was one of the smartest people I've ever known. He was absolutely brilliant. But you'd find that he was giving that credit to other people around him. But it was interesting to know, if you step back and look at it, everyone knew that Jerry was critical to so many different things. He didn't have to brag about it. He didn't have to tell people. People just knew Jerry was the go-to guy if you wanted to get something done. And I think that was fabulous. I think that was just one of the greatest role models anyone could ever be.
Great. It looks like we have one more. You said to be positive. Always work to keep a positive attitude. It's so hard these days to keep a positive attitude. What are some things that we can do to keep that positive attitude?
A big part of it is just saying how you can make something better, how you can help someone. There are so many different things coming about that it doesn't have to be, you're not going to do climate change by yourself. I mean, that's a critically important topic, but it's a massive thing that we all need to collectively work on. But ask yourself the question, is there something simple I can do to make a positive difference in someone's life? I've been writing articles lately, and I gave an illustration that just makes me feel better that I didn't come up with, but I do it. Now I've gotten the habit of doing it. So now when I go to that drive-in, because we can't go in these restaurants very much anymore, you can't at all. is I pay for the person behind me. And my wife picks on me, Sue picks on me about, okay, what did they get? Because the funny part is it's never cost me more than $5. But I think it's great. They have no idea that I'm doing it. There's nothing else going on, but it's a positive thing to do. Again, I'm fortunate. I have that extra $5. Many people don't. But is there something simple you can do to improve someone else's life that when they look at it, they're going to go, hey, can I pass that on and do something nice for somebody else themselves? It's that common effect of how we get people, one another, all saying, let's all try to do one good thing for one another. That's how you change the world.
Great, thank you. I do see one more. You said manage risk, don't avoid it. Have a plan B. With the uncertainty of the times we're in, should we have a plan C and a plan D?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that. Yeah, it's always good to have multiple thoughts about if you get a zig or a zag, which direction do you go? So you may need a B this direction and a C that direction. And as I mentioned, I think I've had it work out where even my plan B and C didn't work. So I keep on adding letters to the alphabet. And once you get up to F, G, or H, then you can be kind of stressed out, but always keep a positive attitude. Because if you come back to it and say, is it better to have a plan or not have a plan? Not having a plan or an idea about what direction you're going to head doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, then you're just going to have whatever comes at you affect you. And isn't it better to say, I'm making choices here. I'm making a choice of how I'm going to live my life, and I want to make positive choices rather than just being the outcome of what's thrown at me. So again, get out there, and this is not formal big business plans. This is thinking about it in your head and creating some logical things. If you can keep it all up in your head, that's fine. If not, just write it down on a simple sheet of paper. Here's what my original plan is. Here's why I'm doing it. And here's my backups. And so if that first one isn't happening, don't ignore what you've already thought about. Go back and think about it, and you may modify it, but it's much better to say, going into this, I already had thought about what my backups could be. And again, it's not just a B, it could be a C or a D or farther down.
Rick, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time that you've spent with us talking about navigating a path. Certainly have got some great key takeaways from you this morning. And we really appreciate you being part of Campus Party Digital Edition USA.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to thank a few of our sponsors.